just that the gift of love remains unwrapped. Unwrapping the gift of love given to us at Christmas begins with a reality check. Mary, are you ready? Are you strapped into the pews? Mary was an unwed pregnant teenager. She was 12. In a time before proper prenatal care, before Planned Parenthood support services, before there were activists and advocates and social workers, before there was a community ready to rally up and gather around her. And yet, she chose not to look at the child within as a burden who would limit her life or as a toy to be cast aside when its usefulness waned. Deciding that she was going to go with God was an act of incredible courage in her day. There are some that suggest that she was putting her life on the line in that moment. Reality check. The gospel records Joseph struggling with what to believe, with what to do, as a man in a society that treated women and children as material assets to be owned. He adopted a child that was not his own and chose not to destroy the child's mother in the court of public opinion. You want to talk about a man of integrity. We don't talk about Joseph near as much as we need to. These two parents were not of any means. Otherwise, they might have been able to buy their way into a decent room somewhere in Bethlehem. And when the labor pains grew too close, they did the best they could with what they had available to them. A corner of a barn. Mary's birthing cries startling the already unsettled stock. An unsanitary trough with a little clean hay that they scraped together to lay the baby down. God's love for these two gave them enough provisions to survive the ordeal together, especially when Herod, King Herod, began to chase them, threatening to kill their child. God's love is not a romantic notion. It's not a nostalgic feeling. It's not a status symbol. It's not a trinket that eventually loses meaning. God's love is a powerful, sustaining force that meets us where we are at, even in the midst of struggle, even in the midst of crisis, and bathes us. God bathes us with healing and hope-filled spirit. That's the nature of God's love. That's the nature of God's gift to us. So meanwhile, in a field outside of town, a group of shepherds, the lowliest of the working class citizens in that day, get a front row seat to the first production, the first proclamation, and a spotlight on their much despised vocation, on their wandering lifestyle, on their grubby clothing, on their calloused hands. That light must have been just overwhelming. God's love for the least and the lowly was made manifest in God's choice of that audience for such an incredible revelation. God did not reveal the Christ and his significance to a bridge club or to Bethlehem's Chamber of Commerce, but to a ragtag gang of unrefined blue-collar folks. Hard-working folks. Not very well-liked folks. Not very rich folks. And even earlier than this, a half a world away, God's love for the Gentile, for people beyond the chosen ones, for people outside of the inner circle, for people of an entirely different race, for people of an entirely different culture, for people of an entirely different religion, was made manifest in God's revelation to the Magi, the wise men, the magicians, the astronomers, the ones named wise. Why? Because of their understanding of stars and herbs and ancient documents. God's love is unconditional. God's love is inclusive. God's love is in blessing purely for the sake of blessing. God's love is undeterred by the smell of sheep and sweat. God doesn't care what you smell like and what you look like. God's love is undeterred by the strangeness of belief and practice. God's love is undeterred by circumstance. God's love is undeterred by human judgment. God didn't care that Mary was 12. Undeterred by what her family would think. Undeterred by what society would do. God's love is undeterred by anything that might threaten to separate one from lesser gods. What does it say in Romans? One of my favorite passages. Nothing, not life, not death, not powers, not principalities, nothing can separate you from the love of God. Nothing. Those other gods, yeah, maybe they're picky, but not the God of the universe, not the God that created you. And that love, God's love, is not only the blessing that we enjoy, but it is the substance out of which we are crafted. You are crafted out of love. Imagine that. It's the very image out of which we are made. And according to Jesus, it's the standard, not the exception. It's the standard to which we are held in our own love of one another. My despairing friend, he used to be Catholic. He used to be Baptist. His mom made him go to church. I remember that because he and I are about the same age, and we grew up together. What my despairing, now non-Christian friend does not need rather, is yet another Christmas card that blithely wishes him happy holidays, or Merry Christmas. My friend does not need a sermon. He does not need a plan of salvation. My friend does not need another pair of socks or a car with a bow on top or some kind of substance to falsely fill the gnawing emptiness that threatens to overwhelm him. Right now, my friend needs somebody with a broom and a dustpan that's willing to roll up their sleeves and scoop up his soul off the floor and give him his life back. My friend, and anyone who is with him this Christmas needs a generous dose of real agape love, divine love, uncut, uncooked, unfiltered, unrefined, and unwrapped, to warm his soul and restore his life. May God's love be our most cherished gift this season, both the one that is cherished because we receive it, but also the one that is cherished because we share it.